All right, so when we break down this song, I'm not going to analyze the chords like I just did. I may do one or two just to, again, get your head wrapped around things. But I'm just going to basically name the triad and what bass note is being used and how to finger it. And then again, there are certain melody notes and stuff. But I would suggest actually any of these chords that I actually show when I show this part. You take that and you analyze, okay, well, what actually, not only what triad over what bass note this is, because you're going to know that when I say this is an A over an A, when I do something like that, you're going to know it's an A major triad because they're all major triads, and you're going to know the bass note is A. But figure out, okay, this is the root, this is the third, this is the fifth of that triad, because that will switch around in these fingerings. So the first chord he uses is this chord, which is the same chord as what we were doing up here with the A, with the D in the bass. It's just moved down here. And what it is, it's F sharp, major triad, with a B in the bass. Okay? So your third finger's on the 4th fret of the D string, second finger's on the 3rd fret of the G string, and first finger is on the 2nd fret of the B string. And that's just the partial chord of this bar chord that you probably already know. But you bar that 2nd fret so that you can get the B note on the A string, 2nd fret. Okay? So that's the first chord. And he basically plays a chord and a melody note. And that melody note is the high E string with the 1st fret on the with the 1st finger on the 2nd fret. So you're just barring that whole 2nd fret. So you have... And then the next chord is the same as the first one, moved up a whole step. So your 1st finger moves up to the 4th fret with the same shape. And you're playing everything except the low E string and the high E string. So that beginning goes... And now that next chord is basically, it may look strange, but it's really just an E flat bar chord, just like an A bar chord, okay? You're moving it up to E flat, and then you're lowering your 1st finger a half step. So that's basically your 1st finger on the 5th fret of the A string, and your pinky bars the 8th fret of the D, G, and B string. Okay? So again, if we look at that, that's really just an E flat bar chord, lowering your 1st finger from that E flat to the D note. And again, that would be analyzed as E flat over D. Okay? So the whole thing so far is... And then the melody note is you lift your pinky. This is kind of a little difficult move because you want to get this chord to still ring out. So you just barely lift the bottom of your pinky up so that you could grab the 6th fret on the B string back down to the 8th fret of the G string. So that whole thing from the beginning. Now what it goes to here is just your B flat major triad, or B flat major chord. But it's playing it with just these notes with the bass note. So you have... And then it runs up those 3 notes on the D, G, and B string as the melody. So... Now it does that same shape as he did here, but instead of, and moving that up a whole step, but instead of having the root as the E note, it has the root on the 6th string, which is the B note. So that B flat chord, now you have the root of the B, and you have this F major triad above it. So that's basically your first finger on the 7th fret of the E string. You skip the A string, and your pinky plays the 10th fret on the D, G, and B string. And again, that would be written as F over B, which is F/B, basically. So the whole thing so far is... And it does the same kind of walk down of the melody, where you have the pinky on the 10th fret, you lift it up to play the 8th fret of the B string, and then you go back down to the 10th fret of the G string. So that's... And now you do another triad, which is a C major triad, same as this triad up here. It's the root, 3rd, and 5th with a C in the bass. Now that could be written again as C major, or it could be C with a C in the bass. It could be written 2 different ways. So that's... and now the melody note on that C chord is the 10th fret of the E string to the 8th fret of the E string. So that whole thing is... This is where it gets into some cool stuff. Now you have this E flat triad, which again is your typical A shape that you know. Okay, so it's an E flat triad with a C sharp in the bass. And that's a cool chord, I think. So and now the melody goes, again, to play that, you have your 2nd finger on the 9th fret of the E string, you skip the A string, and you bar the 8th fret on the D, G, and B string. And that's all with your first finger there. Then the melody goes from that 8th fret on the B string to the 10th to the 11th with your 3rd finger and 4th finger, all on the B string. So now the next chord it goes to is, it moves up from that C sharp to the D in the bass. So that's moving from the 9th fret to the 10th fret on the E string. And the chord it plays underneath is basically just a B flat major triad with a D in the bass. Okay, so your 2nd finger moves up from the 9th fret to the 10th fret on the E string. That's your bass note. And then the triad is this. Your 1st finger's on the 8th fret of the D string, 3rd finger's on the 10th fret of the G string, and your pinky is on the 11th fret of the B string. And that shape right there is the same as this D shape. You know, if you put your 1st finger there, like the open string was being barred with your 1st finger, and you just move that up to here, but you don't play that high E string. So that's the same shape with a different bass note. Now, that whole thing goes like this. And then the melody note is your 1st finger is barring that 8th fret. So you get the 8th fret high E string back down to your pinky on the 11th fret, the B string. So that's... It's just really more notes ringing out in the chord. So again, that's... Now this is kind of a weird chord to play. It's basically this major triad. Again, these are all just major triads, so the shapes probably are familiar to you. It's just this major bar chord, the A bar chord, moved up to here, and instead of playing the root on the A string, you're playing the root on the E string. So your first finger goes back down to the 9th fret of the E string, and your third finger bars the 11th fret of the D, G, and B string. Okay, so that's... Now to get this melody is a little difficult because again you got to really kind of bend that third finger if you want to keep this chord ringing. And your fingers will start hurting with some of these, at least mine did, trying to get those melody notes clean. Especially when you're trying to just kind of lift the base of a certain finger but to keep the tip of your finger on the strings. It's an exercise for your hands. Anyway, so this... The melody goes, after you play that chord, the melody is your first finger's barring this 9th fret on the high E string. And then you play your pinky on the 13th fret of the B string, and you go back down to where your third finger is barring already on the 11th fret of the B string. So that's... So that whole thing so far is... Then it goes down to this chord, which is the same as the chord you played up here already, but it's moved down a whole step. So you have your third finger on the 8th fret of the E string, then your first finger on the 6th fret of the D string, third finger on the 8th fret of the G string, and your fourth finger on the 9th fret of the B string. And again, your second fret is on that 8th fret of the E string. Okay, so that whole thing. And then you just lift your pinky to get where your first finger is barring on that 6th fret. And then you just play those notes from the B string to the G string to the D string down. So then your first finger is the 6th fret B string, 8th fret G string, and 6th fret again on the D string. Okay, so that whole thing is... Then it goes to this chord, which is basically a C-sharp triad or a D-flat triad with a B in the bass. Okay, so that's just barring the 6th fret on the D, G, and B string, and the B note, which is the 7th fret on the E string. So that's... And then you just play those 3 notes that you have barred again. So... And then this is basically that triad shape that we initially talked about. It's an A flat major triad with a B flat in the bass. So that's your third finger on the 6th fret of the E string, then your pinky on the 6th fret of the D string, second finger on the G string on the 5th fret, and first finger on the 4th fret of the B string. And then the melody is just... You play the D and G string again. So that whole thing so far. Now this is kind of a weird chord too, especially to get that melody note. What it is, it's a D flat major triad with an A in the bass. Okay, or you can call it a C sharp major triad, C sharp major chord with a in the bass. Okay, but An easy way to play that is your third finger barring the 6th fret of the D, G, and B string, and then maybe your first finger on that A note of the E string, 5th fret. Okay? But in order to get this melody, you kind of have to do it from the chord that you just came from. It's easiest to just bar that 6th fret with your pinky on the D, G, and B string. So you have this, and then use your second finger on the A note of this, the 5th fret of the 6th string. Then the melody is going to be, you basically grab the 4th fret of the E string to the 6th fret of the E string, and you have to bar that with your pinky. So, and it's kind of a weird thing because you have to leave enough room with your barring of the pinky to be able to hear that 4th fret of the E string. So that whole thing so far. Now here's a cool little chord too. It's basically this D shape with the G in the bass, but moved up a half step. Okay, so you're basically you have your second finger on the 4th fret of the E string, then your first finger bars the 5th fret of the D, G, B, and E string, and then your third finger grabs the 4th fret on the B string. Okay, and that melody is it's basically grabbing the B and the G string again. Then you move that whole chord down a whole step, where your second finger is now on the 2nd fret of the E string. And it's the same shape, but you don't play that high E string. So you're not playing the A string or the E string, you're playing everything else. So the whole thing.